I left Barstow at 4:30 a.m. with the fuel light blinking and my last $43 in the glove box. The company pickup, a dented white Tacoma with the Mojave Northern logo half sandblasted away, drank the last of the spare gallon before I reached the access road. I parked beside the milepost 163 stake, killed the engine, and let the silence settle. The signal box sat on its concrete pad 100 yards off the main line. A single-story cinder rectangle painted the color of dried bone. No trees, just creosote and sun-bleached ballast. The wind tasted of diesel that had burned off hours earlier. Supervisor Ramirez waited by the gate, arms folded, boots on the bottom rail like he owned the desert. He handed me a clipboard, a fresh grease pencil, and a key ring heavy enough to serve as a weapon. "Shift starts at 0500, he said. "You relieve Klein. He's had a long night." I signed the top sheet, noting the date, my employee number, and the mileage on the SACE. Tacoma. The paper smelled of solvent. Ramirez watched me write, then pointed at the signal box door. "Inside, you'll find the standing orders. Memorize before you touch anything." I told him I would. He left without another word, taillights shrinking toward the highway until the dawn glare swallowed them. Klein met me in the doorway, eyes red, uniform dark with sweat despite the chill. He offered a handshake that felt like grabbing a warm wrench. "Radio's on channel 6, he muttered. "Log is current to 0438. Nothing's rolled since the 315 eastbound. You should be quiet till 7. He stepped past me, then paused. "Read the whole card, rookie. Out here almost counts against you." I watched him climb into a waiting Jeep that hadn't been there when I arrived. They left me dust and the low hum of battery chargers. Inside, the signal box smelled of ozone and old coffee. One main room, steel desk, 2 chairs, a Rankin controller the size of a chest freezer, and a panel of 49 lever backs painted red, yellow, green. A single window faced north, toward the tracks. A cooler sat under the desk, inventory taped to the lid, 12 bottles of water, 4 AA batteries, 2 spare bulbs 12 volt, 1 roll vinyl electrical tape, 1 bag of salt coarse, not iodized. I checked off each item, counting aloud. All correct. On the desk lay a laminated card, 5 by 8, edges yellowed. The heading read, Mojave Northern, Remote Signal 163, Core Rules. I copied the list into the logbook before I allowed myself coffee from the thermos. Numbering was already printed in bold. 1. No train scheduled between 2:10 a.m. and 2:20 a.m. If block sensor trips during that window, set all levers to red, kill main lights, do not acknowledge dispatcher until sensor clears. 2. Sound the horn only twice. A third blast invites inspection. 3. If headlights appear on the siding that does not correspond to a scheduled consist, douse our lamps, step outside, count 100 paces north. Do not re-enter until locomotive passes, even if whistle sounds for stop. 4. Never open the south door after sunset. The platform out back ends at the ties. Use the north door only. Number 5. Should the radio request you by name outside channel 6, ignore 3 times, then resume normal traffic on 4-minute intervals. 6. When temperature drops below 50 Fahrenheit, lock both restroom stalls from the outside and post the yellow tag. Unlock at first light. 7. If the overhead wire hum changes pitch, note the time, seal the window with tape, and do not watch the glass. 8. The spare bulb carton holds 12 bulbs. Count them at start of shift. If you count 13, place the extra in the salt bag. Set the bag on the track. Step back 50 yards. Wait for the 545 westbound to resolve. 9. Do not accept paper orders waived from the cab unless the train has come to a complete stop. 10. Should a train pass at track speed without acknowledgement, log the axle. Count. Then, radio dispatcher using the phrase Dark Horse eastbound or Dark Horse westbound. Do not speculate. 11. The locker marked K stays locked. If you find it open, close it. Spin dial 3 times. Report to dispatcher at end of shift 12. At end of shift, inventory again. Sign only when satisfied. Discrepancies ride your record. I read the card 3 times, then stared at the silent rails until the sun cleared the Providence Mountains. At 5:02 I logged, rules reviewed, all clear, ready for traffic. The first 3 hours passed like any rail job. I copied dispatcher bulletins, tested lever tension, swept creosote flakes off the porch. At 8:17 a double-stack freight growled past at 45, cab number 8741. I noted Axel's 208 and the driver's lazy wave. Normal. I began to believe Klein's exhaustion came from too much coffee and not enough trust in printed procedure. At 9:03, the overhead hum dipped half a tone, enough to vibrate the window pane. I glanced at the thermometer, 61 degrees, Rule 7 applied, though the card lacked a temperature clause. I sealed the window edges with 2 strips of tape, working methodically so the adhesive squealed. The hum evened out after 90 seconds. I logged 9.5, harmonic anomaly, tape seal applied, hum, stable. I kept my eyes on the ledger until the second hand swept a full circle. The radio crackled at 9:46. Signalman 163, this is DS-14, over. I thumbed the mic. DS-14 163, channel 6 clear. Traffic in 30. Maintenance of way truck wants through your siding. Give them yellow, return to red after caboose. Copy, yellow then red after last axle. I set the lever, watched the panel lamps cycle, and felt the small satisfaction of gears obeying. The truck appeared at 10:12, a high-rail Dodge with flashers but no flagman. It coasted past the window at 15 miles per hour. I counted axles, 4. After the rear bumper cleared, I returned the siding to red and logged the move. The day turned hot. The window tape bubbled. I left it in place, no rule about removal. Lunch was crackers and water consumed at the desk. I inventoried bulbs, 12 correct, salt bag dry, locker K-locked. I allowed myself a 10-minute walk along the ballast, measuring 120 paces north until the signal box looked small enough to pocket. Heat shimmer made the rails flex like rubber. I returned, wiped sweat, and read Rule 5 aloud to stay awake. At 14:38 the dispatcher called again. 163, Amtrak 794 running 20 late. Hold all meets until further. Copy, holding meets. I set the crossover red and watched the horizon for the passenger's headlight. None came. At 15 exactly, the overhead hum dropped once more, lower this time, a bass note you felt in the sternum. Again the thermometer read above 50. I sealed the window with a second layer, covering the glass entirely. The office dimmed to amber. I used the desk lamp to finish log entries, writing by feel more than sight. At 15:27, someone knocked on the south door, 3 measured taps. I froze with the pencil mid-stroke. Rule 4. Never open the south door after sunset. The sun still burned high. My watch said 15 to 27, but the sealed window masked the angle. I stepped to the north jamb, cracked it enough for light. Shadows fell short, official daylight. The knock came again, identical cadence. I kept my hand off the latch and spoke toward the steel. South door is exit only. Use north side. No reply. I counted 60 seconds. No footsteps. When I checked through the peephole later, only ballast and heat. At 16:10, the overhead wire quieted. I peeled the tape, rolled it into a ball, pocketed the wad. The Amtrak still hadn't appeared, though the dispatcher had promised update by 16. I radioed DS-14. No answer on channel 6. I waited 4 minutes, tried again. Silence. I logged 16:14, dispatcher quiet. Amtrak 794 unaccounted, continuing protocol. My handwriting looked tighter than I felt. Relief should have arrived at 17. At 17:45, I accepted that no one was coming. I inventoried again. Water 12, batteries 4, bulbs 12, tape partial roll, salt course. I signed the bottom, added a line. Relief absent, continuing duty. The horizon stayed empty. Darkness came quick after 18:30. I locked the north door, switched on the porch floods, and killed the interior lamp so I could see outside without being silhouetted. The rule card lay beside the log. I read rules 1 through 12 aloud. numbering with my finger like a child reciting. At 19:03, the block sensor chimed. I checked the schedule printout, nothing authorized until 2040. The sensor showed an eastbound occupancy, mile 162.8 to 164.1 mi section. Headlights should have been visible. The desert night carries engine beams 30 miles. I saw only stars. Rule 1 applied, 2:10-2:20 a.m. Window only, but the sensor tripped regardless. I set levers to red, doused main lights, and sat in darkness lit only by LEDs on the panel. The radio stayed quiet. After 4 minutes, the occupancy cleared. I logged 19.8, unexplained block trip, levers reset, no visual. My hand ached from gripping nothing. At 19:45, a locomotive whistle drifted from the west, low and mournful, not the standard. 2 long, 1 short. I stepped onto the north porch, flashlight off. A headlight appeared, distance hard to judge in open country. It grew fast, 70 miles an hour, maybe more. I should have heard dynamic brake whine. Instead, the rails sang a single steady chord. The whistle came again, same pitch, no Doppler shift. I counted axles as the beam passed the window, 0. No engines, no cars, just light. The wind of its passage rocked my shirt. I returned inside, locked up and wrote, 1948, Dark Horse westbound, no axles, horn irregular, logged per Rule 10. I brewed coffee even though the manual advised against caffeine after dusk. The rules didn't forbid it. At 21, I counted bulbs again, 12. At 21:30, I counted 13. The extra bulb lay in the middle of the carton, unwrapped, filament bright as if powered. I lifted it with tweezers, dropped it into the salt bag, and carried the bag outside. I paced 50 yards north, set the bag on the eastbound rail, and retreated. The night felt colder than 50, but the thermometer read 55. I kept my back to the box and waited for the 21:45 scheduled westbound. It never came. At 22:10 I returned. The bag was gone, rail polished clean. I logged resolution. Midnight approached like a slow freight. I walked the interior perimeter every 30 minutes, counting steps, 16 lengthwise, 12 across. At 23:03 the radio popped. Signalman 1, 6-3, you copy? The voice sounded like Ramirez but used my first name, which I hadn't told dispatch. I waited. Second call, you there, Eddie? My name again. Rule 5, ignore 3 times. I keyed the mic on the 4th interval. DS-14, send traffic. No reply. Channel 6, hissed empty. At 0:17 the sensor tripped eastbound, same mile marks. I set red, killed lights, sat. This time I heard wheels squealing freight brakes in emergency, yet no train appeared. The squeal lasted 40 seconds, faded, sensor clear. I wrote the line, but the pencil snapped. I sharpened it with my pocket knife, counted 12 turns of the blade. 1:55 crept up, the dead hour before the forbidden window. I inventoried everything, water 12, batteries 4, bulbs 12, tape enough for 2 more seals, salt half bag, locker case still locked. I rehearsed Rule 1 aloud. No train scheduled 2:10-2:20 if block sensor trips. My voice sounded like a stranger's. At 2:09 the overhead hum ceased entirely. The panel lamps flickered but stayed lit. I gripped the lever backs and watched the clock hands. 2:10. The sensor remained dark. Good. 2:12. A knock landed on the south door, heavier this time, metal on metal. I stayed seated. 2:14. The knock moved to the west wall, then the roof, 3 raps each surface, precise as Morse. 2:16. Silence. 2:18. A headlight blossomed on the main line, eastbound, no more than 200 yards out, closing at speed. The schedule forbade traffic. I set red, doused lights, kept still. The engineer cab blurred past. Windows, black. No whistle, no diesel roar. I counted 0 axles again. The sensor never tripped. At 2:21, the headlight vanished mid-stride, as if switched off. I exhaled, realized I hadn't breathed for 2 minutes. Dawn bled pale orange at 5:02. I opened the north door and let the air in, cool and smelling of sage. No trains, no jeeps, no relief. I inventoried, signed the log, and taped the fresh sheet to the desk for Ramirez. My hands trembled, but numbers added. I had obeyed every rule I understood. At 6:40, tire crunch approached. Ramirez stepped out, face unreadable behind sunglasses. He scanned the porch, the rails, the salt residue on the tie ends. I offered the clipboard. He flipped pages slowly, nodded once. "You logged a Dark Horse westbound," he said. "Correct. 13 bulbs? Resolved. Locker K? Locked." He handed me a new card, laminated, edges sharp. "Amendments effective immediately. Same numbering continues." Then he climbed back into his Padaruf, pick up and drove away before I could ask about Klein, about pay, about sleep. I sat at the desk and read the addendum, copying each line into the log. 13. If dawn temperature is below 50 Fahrenheit after a night with Dark Horse sightings, remain on duty until temperature reaches 50 and holds for 30 minutes. 14. Do not trust axle counts of 0. Log them but circle the figure. 15. When overhead hum ceases during 210-220 window, add 1 full strip of tape across the main panel, left to right, before resetting levers. 16. If your name is spoken on channel 6, respond only with the phrase, "milepost clear," nothing more. 17. The spare bulb may reappear inside. If so, repeat salt procedure regardless of hour. 18. Any knock that moves along walls clockwise requires inspection of the south door lock from inside only. Do not touch the handle. 19. Missing relief is not abandonment. Hold post until officially relieved or instructed by dispatcher using yesterday's date as code 20. End of shift inventory now includes counting the tape roll segments. Start with 48, 1 used per seal. I taped the card beneath the first, edges aligned, then walked outside. The thermometer read 47. I pulled the collar of my coat tighter and waited for the sun to climb. The next 2 cycles blurred. Trains passed, mostly on time. I spoke only to logbook and radio. A week later, the company assigned a trainee, Rodriguez, fresh from Fort Worth Academy. He arrived at 16, eager, boots unscuffed. I met him on the north porch. "First time at a remote box?" I asked. "Yes, sir. Ready to learn." I handed him the duplicated rules, watched his eyes widen at Rule 4. "Memorize before you touch anything," I said, repeating Ramirez. Rodriguez nodded, copied the lines in careful print. I showed him the inventory, the cooler, the bulb carton currently 12. I warned him about the 13 possibility. He laughed until he saw my face. Night rolled in. I took first watch so he could observe. At 2020, the overhead hum dipped. Rodriguez reached for the window. I caught his wrist. "Tape first," I said. We sealed together. He cut the strips. I laid them straight. The hum stabilized. He smiled, proud. I did not tell him about the knock yet. At 2250, a real freight rolled through, 92 axles, driver waving. Rodriguez counted aloud, double-checked my tally. Normal felt strange. We walked the perimeter, 16 by 12. I showed him the south door peephole, let him see nothing beyond. He yawned at 2330. I sent him to the cot in the supply alcove and continued solo. 2:10 approached. I sat Rodriguez beside me, rules card in his lap. The sensor stayed quiet. At 2:13, the overhead hum vanished. I pointed at Amendment 15. He tore tape, handed me the strip. I sealed the panel left to right, covering LEDs. We sat blind to indicators but safe from reflection, or so I hoped. 2:21, hum returned. We peeled tape, reset levers. He exhaled, shakily. I logged. Dawn came gold and cold, 44 degrees. Per Amendment 13, we stayed. Rodriguez paced to stay warm, counting paces aloud, 196 lengthwise, 144 across. At 8:36, the thermometer finally kissed 50. We stood another 30 minutes before I allowed him to sign the log. My handwriting looked older. Relief arrived at 09. 10. Ramirez again, face still hidden behind tint. He carried a fresh carton of bulbs, a new roll of tape, and a sealed envelope stamped "Emergency Protocols, open after first missed call." He handed them over without comment, then studied Rodriguez like a man inspecting welded seams. Finally he spoke. "You'll ride paired another cycle, then solo." Rodriguez swallowed but nodded. Inside, we opened the envelope together. A single sheet, heavy paper, red border, emergency protocols, Signalman 16321. If dispatcher fails to answer 3 consecutive calls spaced 4 minutes apart, declare communication silence and switch radio to channel 9 only for train identification. All else use log 22. During communication silence, set all levers red at the top of each hour until silence ends. Log times 23. Should a train stop inside the block and remain motionless for more than 10 minutes, exit the box, walk north 150 paces, wait until motion resumes or dawn, whichever arrives first. Do not approach the locomotive. 24. If axle count differs between your tally and the sensor by more than 4, trust your eyes, circle the discrepancy, place salt across both rails after train clears. 25. When wind carries smell of juniper, though no juniper grows within a mile, lock both doors, seal vents with tape, count bulbs every 30 minutes until odor fades. Rodriguez read, lips moving. He looked up. Juniper? Smell remembers faster than eyes, I said, though I had no explanation. I folded the sheet, slipped it behind the core rules. We restocked, signed, and waited for night. 2 cycles later, the company cut Rodriguez loose to solo. I moved to a relief rotation, covering sick days, but 163 remained my base. I slept in Barstow motels, dreaming of leverbacks and 0 axles. Debt dwindled. My mother's hospital balance finally zeroed. I kept working. Autumn cooled the desert. One November dusk, I arrived to find Rodriguez pale, hands clenched around a mug that had long gone cold. "Bad night?" I asked. He slid the log over. At 1:57 he had logged, knock clockwise progression, inspected south lock, all secure. At 02:11, overhead hum ceased, taped panel. At 02:25, dark horse eastbound, 0 axles, whistle continuous. At 02:40, smell of juniper, locked doors, sealed vents. At 03:15, dispatcher silent 3 calls, declared common. Silence, set hourly reds. Relief arrived 7:50. Temperature held at 48 until 8:30. I whistled low. You used 5 protocols in 1 night. Never missed a rule, he said, voice hollow. I clapped his shoulder, felt him flinch. You survived. Logs clean. He stared at the panel as if it might bite. I sent him home. Winter brought storms. One evening, clouds stacked like freight cars overhead, purple, black, static flickering inside. The company radioed extra caution. Flash flood watches littered the airwaves. I reached 163 at 15 to 30. Wind already prying at the door. Ramirez had dropped a weather kit. 2 more rolls of tape, glow sticks, a hand crank barometer, and a second envelope marked extended silence. Open only after barometer drops below 29.8. I stowed it, finished inventory, watched the horizon bruise. At 18:10, rain arrived horizontal, rattling the tin roof like birdshot. The overhead wire sang a high, thin note I'd never heard. I sealed the window, then the vents, conserving tape. At 19, dispatcher called, routine, voice chopped by static. At 19:12, the radio went quiet. I tried every 4 minutes. Nothing. By 19:24, I declared communication silence per protocol 21. Switched to channel 9, logged. Wind escalated to scream. At 20 sharp, I stepped onto the porch to set levers red. Rain felt like gravel. Visibility 20 yards. I completed the task, retreated inside, water streaming off my coat. At 20:37, the sensor showed occupancy westbound, mile 162.8, 164.1, speed 0, a stopped train. I peered through the peephole, headlight glow diffused in rain, engines dark, no ditch lights. 10 minutes ticked by motionless. Protocol 23, exit, walk north 150 paces. I zipped my coat, pocketed a glow stick, left the north door secured behind me. Stepping into the storm felt like wading a river. I counted paces aloud, breath torn away. At 150, I stopped, clicked the glow stick, planted it upright in ballast. The stopped train showed as a steel wall fading into rain. No engine noise, no exhaust. A figure stood beneath the headlight, facing me, coat flapping. It raised a hand but did not beckon. I kept still. After 5 minutes, the headlight dimmed, then brightened, and the train rolled east without accelerating, as though gravity had tilted. I counted 0 axles. When the last car passed, if car it was, I returned inside. Log 21-2, motion resumed. Barometer read 29.75. I opened the second envelope, rain-wet fingers smearing ink. Extended silence protocols, Signalman 16326. When barometer falls below 29.8, set levers read every 30 minutes instead of hourly. Log exact minute, 27. If water reaches the bottom rail, shut down all power at the main breaker, switch to handheld lantern, continue lever operations manually. Red means red regardless of lamp source, 28. Should thunder sound before lightning is seen, reverse. Rule 4, use south door only. Keep north door locked until thunder ceases, 29. Count bulbs every 15 minutes. If count reaches 14, remove 2 bulbs. Place each in separate salt bags, set on opposite rails. Wait for next train to resolve both, 30. When wind smell shifts from juniper to creosote, though rails are underwater, speak aloud the phrase, "dark horse returning," then cease all radio calls for the remainder of shift. I sealed the envelope, taped it to the panel, and implemented Rule 26 immediately. Red levers every half hour soaked the minutes. At 22, thunder rolled overhead, but the sky stayed black, no lightning. I obeyed Rule 28, relocated to the south porch for checks. Rain leaked under the door. I kept it shut between rounds, wiping water with a rag I wrung into an empty bottle. Bulbs, 12, 14, 13, 12 again. I slept in 90-second bursts upright at the desk. Dawn arrived slate gray, barometer 29.68, water halfway up the ties. No trains, no dispatcher. At 7:10, the smell shifted, sharp creosote boiled, in rainwater. I spoke into the log, voice raw, "Dark horse returning." Then I turned the radio off. At 8:05, the storm broke like a slammed door. Sunlight sheeted across flooded ballast. The water drained through desert gravel faster than overflow. By 9, only puddles remained. Barometer climbed past 29.8. I reset levers, restored power, reopened Channel 9. Dispatcher answered on the first call, irritated. "Where you been? 163. Communication. Silence. Storm protocol," I said. He gave no apology, just traffic updates. I signed the log, noted bulb count back to 12, south door unused since thunder ceased at 8:06. My hands were wrinkled white, nails purple. I could not stop shaking. Rodriguez relieved me at 10:15. I handed over a clean rule set, all amendments attached, and a personal note, "Trust the count, not the censor." He scanned my storm entries, lips tightening. "You okay?" he asked. "Temperature's 52, I answered, though he hadn't. Asked about weather. I walked to the Tacoma, drove east with the heater full, eyes on the rear view until the signal box disappeared into shimmer. I slept 14 hours in a motel, dreamed of glow sticks marking nothing. The company called at dusk. Ramirez wanted me back at 163 for a special inspection. Overtime, double rate, debt long gone but duty still tethered. I agreed. Arrival at 22 felt like trespass. Rodriguez met me inside, face lit by lantern power cut deliberate, he said. Ramirez waited, arms folded, flashlight pointed at the floor. "Tonight we audit," he announced. "End-to-end inventory, full rule test. Company wants proof the protocols hold." The rain started just as I crossed the county line, a steady, gray sheet that blurred the dense wall of pines on either side of the 2-lane highway. My old sedan's wipers thumped a sluggish rhythm, barely keeping up. The directions from the employment agency were terse. Follow State Route 14 for 27 miles. Pass the abandoned lumber mill. Turn left onto a gravel service road. marked only by a rusted mailbox with the number 187 stenciled in faded white paint, and proceed for another 2 miles to the gate. I'd counted the mile markers, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. I needed this job. The final notice from the student loan people was sitting on my passenger seat, a crisp, white rectangle of doom that had dictated my last 6 months of desperate applications. This one, a night watchman position at a private telecommunications relay station, paid 3 times the going rate. The ad had said isolated conditions and mandatory 12-hour shifts. It had said non-negotiable adherence to operational protocols. I could live with that. I had to. The gate was exactly as described, 10 feet of chain link topped with coiled barbed wire, set between 2 thick stands of fir trees. A heavy-duty combination lock hung from the latch. The number the agency had given me, 149207, worked on the first try. The lock clicked open with a sound like a breaking bone. I pushed the gate inward, its whine cutting through the patter of rain, and drove through. In my rearview mirror, I saw the gate swing slowly shut on its own, the lock somehow re-engaging itself without my touch. I told myself it was the wind. The relay station was a squat, concrete block building the color of dried moss, a single story high with a flat roof and a skeletal radio tower spearing into the low clouds. It looked less like a piece of critical infrastructure and more like a forgotten Cold War bunker. There was a single vehicle parked out front, a dusty, dark blue SUV. I pulled in beside it, killed the engine, and sat for a moment, listening to the rain drum on the roof. The silence that followed was immense, broken only by the ticking of the cooling engine and the drip of water from the trees. The front door was solid steel, painted to look like wood. There was no handle, just a keypad. Before I could even raise my hand to knock, a series of heavy bolts clunked back and the door swung inward. A man stood there, maybe in his late 50s, with a face that looked like it had been worn down by years of bad weather and quiet worry. He was dressed in faded navy blue coveralls with the name Phil stitched over the breast pocket. "You must be the new guy," he said, his voice a dry rasp. "Alex, get in, quick." I stepped inside, and he shut the door immediately, throwing 3 separate deadbolts. The interior was a shock of sterile, humming normality. Harsh fluorescent lights shone down on gray carpet tiles and beige walls. The air was cool, dry, and smelled of ozone and stale coffee. A bank of monitors flickered on a long console desk, showing various angles of the perimeter, the tower, and the empty access road. It looked like the back office of a data center, not the front line of some unnamed dread. "I'm Phil, your relief," he said, not offering a hand. "Shift change is at 6:45. Sharp, not 6:44, not 6:46. My truck's engine is timed to turn over at 6:43, and I am through that gate by 6:44. You are inside, with this door locked, by 6:45. Understood?" I nodded. "Understood." "Good. Tours first, then the rules." He led me on a brisk walk through the compact space, main room with the console, a small, tidy kitchenette with an ancient microwave and a half-size fridge, a bathroom with a steel door, a supply closet, locked, and at the end of a short hallway, 2 more doors. "This one," he said, tapping the left-hand door, "is the server room. You don't need to go in there, ever. Environmental controls are automatic. This one," he tapped the right-hand door, a heavier model with a reinforced frame and another keypad, "is the secure storage in your safe room. You will need the code for this one. It's 291084. Don't write it down. Memorize it." I repeated it under my breath. 291084. "The keypad on this side is always active. If you ever need to get in, you get in fast. You don't hesitate. You don't stop to grab your coat. You get in and you lock it." He looked at me, his eyes pale and serious. "You understand the difference between don't need to and need to?" "I think so. You'll learn," he said, and turned back toward the main console. He showed me the logbook, a thick binder filled with densely written pages. Every patrol, every radio check, every anomaly, no matter how small, you write it down. Time, location, description, clarity, and precision. This isn't a diary. It's a record. He pointed to a rugged-looking radio set charging in a dock. This is your primary comms. Channel 4 for the dispatcher, Sandra. She does a check-in every hour, on the hour. You answer with your call sign, which is Watchman. Just Watchman. Not Alex, not Hey. You confirm your status is green. Always green, unless it's not. If it's not green, you follow the protocols. Your patrol route is a full circuit of the building's exterior. You do it on the hour, every hour, starting at 7 p.m. It takes approximately 6 minutes at a normal walking pace. You are back inside before the 10-minute mark. No exceptions. He opened a locker next to the desk. Inside hung a heavy-duty flashlight, a weatherproof jacket, and a belt with a ring of keys and a small canister of pepper spray. Your field gear? Check the flashlight batteries before every patrol. The jacket is for the rain. It always rains here. The keys are for the front door and the supply closet. The spray is for animals. Sometimes you get coyotes. It all sounded standard, if excessively rigid. I'd worked security before, mostly for warehouses. This seemed like a more isolated, more paranoid version of the same. Then he sat down at the console, swiveled the chair to face me, and picked up a single sheet of paper that had been lying beside the keyboard. It was crisp, white, with a list of numbered items typed in a simple font. "Now," Phil said, his voice dropping into a flatter, more rehearsed tone. "These are the operational protocols. The rules. You will read them. You will memorize them. You will follow them exactly as written. There is no room for interpretation. There is no room for creativity. Your predecessor, a kid named Ben, thought he could improvise on Rule 7. He was wrong." He handed me the paper. My eyes scanned the top of the page. There was no letterhead, no logo, just the numbers, 1 through 13. "Read them aloud," Phil instructed. "It helps with the memorization." I cleared my throat, the fluorescent lights suddenly feeling colder. I began to read. 1. The patrol must be completed between 1 minute past the hour and 10 minutes past the hour. You must not begin early. You must not finish late. If you have not completed your circuit and re-entered the building by 10 minutes past the hour, you will proceed directly to the safe room and remain there until your shift ends at 6:45 a.m. 2. Upon re-entering the building after patrol, you will lock the front door with all 3 deadbolts. You will then look at the security monitor for the south-facing camera, monitor 3, and count to 30. If you see a figure standing at the tree line, you will say, aloud, "Not welcome." You will then ignore it and continue your duties. Do not acknowledge it again. 3. Between the hours of 10 p.m. and 4 a.m., you will not use the bathroom. If you must void your bladder, there is a bottle in the supply closet. If you must do more, you will hold. This is not a suggestion. 4. The radio dispatcher, Sandra, will contact you every hour. She will identify herself as dispatch. If she uses any other name, or if she says Sandra, do not respond. Turn the radio volume to 0 for the remainder of that hour. 5. At 2:10 a.m., you will go to the south window in the main room and draw the blackout curtain across it. You must finish this task by 2:15 a.m. At 2:20 a.m., you will reopen the curtain. The curtain must be fully open before 2:21 a.m. 6. You will perform a full inventory of the supply closet at 11 p.m. and again at 4 a.m. The list is taped to the closet door. Every item must be accounted for. If there is an extra item, do not touch it. Leave the closet, lock it, and note the discrepancy in the log. If an item is missing, proceed to the safe room and follow emergency protocol A7. If you hear a woman crying from within the server room, you are to put on the industrial headphones hanging on the console and play the white noise track from the cassette player until the sound stops. Do not, under any circumstances, open the server room door to investigate. 8. If any of the exterior lights fail, do not attempt to repair them. Note the time and location in the log. The number of non-functioning lights will never exceed 3. If a 4th light fails, proceed to the safe room and follow emergency protocol B9. You will take your lunch break at midnight. You may eat only what you brought with you. Do not consume any food or drink you find in the refrigerator, even if it is packaged and appears sealed. 10. If you see a deer on the grounds, observe its movement. If it moves like a deer, note it in the log. If it moves in any other way, if it walks backward, if it stands on its hind legs, if its head rotates more than 90 degrees, you are to look at your feet and count backwards from 100. Do not look up until you reach 0. 11. At 3:33 a.m., the power will flicker. This is normal. The backup generators will engage. If the power does not flicker at 3:33 a.m., proceed to the safe room. 12. A man in a yellow raincoat may appear near the access gate during your patrol. He will not have a face. Do not shine your light directly on him. Do not speak to him. Continue your patrol at your normal pace. He is harmless if ignored. 13. You are the only person on site. If you see another person inside the building who is not me during shift change, or if you see someone who looks like me at any other time, they are not me. Get to the safe room immediately. I finished reading. The hum of the servers in the distant room seemed to have grown louder. My mouth was dry. I looked from the paper to Phil's impassive face. What happens if you break a rule? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Phil didn't smile. You don't want to find out. Ben did. He's not here anymore. He stood up, checked his watch. It's 6:42. My truck starts in 1 minute. The rules are your Bible, Alex. They are the only thing that keeps this place running. They are the only thing that keeps you safe. Memorize them. Obey them. Don't be clever. He walked to the door, his movements practiced and efficient. He disengaged the deadbolts in sequence. The door swung open. The rain was still falling, the twilight gloom deepening. He didn't look back. The gate code is the same on your way out. Shift ends at 6:45. Don't be late. Then he was gone, striding to his SUV. I heard the engine turn over, precisely on time. I watched through the reinforced glass pane in the door as his headlights swept across the gravel, and he disappeared down the access road. I was alone. I pushed the first deadbolt home, then the second, then the third. The thud of each metal bar sliding into its housing was the only sound in the sudden profound silence. I turned and faced the humming, brightly lit room. The logbook lay open on the desk. The radio was a silent black brick. The sheet of paper with the 13 rules felt heavy in my hand. My first patrol was in 15 minutes. I picked up the flashlight from the locker. My hands were steady as I checked the batteries. They were full. I was doing this for the money, I told myself. For the debt. It was just a job. A job with a very, very strange employee handbook. I clipped the key ring to my belt, the keys jangling unnaturally loud. I looked at the clock. It was 6:52 p.m. I had 8 minutes. I began to read the rules again, silently, this time committing them to memory. The words seemed to burrow into my brain, each one a tiny, cold seed of dread. Thump. The sound was soft, distant, but distinct. It came from the direction of the server room, a single, muffled impact, like a fist hitting a heavy door. I froze, the rules half remembered. Then, nothing. Just the hum. I looked at the clock. 6:53. I had 7 minutes until my patrol. Rule 7 echoed in my mind. If you hear a woman crying from within the server room, but this hadn't been a cry. It had been a thump. I stood there, waiting, listening. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. I made a decision. I walked to the console, picked up a pen, and opened the logbook. In clear block letters, I wrote the time, 18:53. I wrote the location, interior near server room hallway. I wrote the description, single muffled impact sound, no recurrence. I put the pen down. My heart was beating a little too fast. It was probably just the building settling, or a pipe. It was an old building. It had to be. I picked up the flashlight again. I looked at the south-facing monitor. The tree line was a dark, indistinct blur in the rain. Nothing was there. Yet, I took a deep breath. It was going to be a long night.